Welcome to our deep dive into Fourth Wing. This book is everywhere I look. Reviews, articles, social media buzz, and you know what else? The numbers are the numbers are really something. Over 1.5 million ratings on Goodreads, averaging 4.59. That's impressive on its own. But then you add on over 200,000 reviews.
Yeah.
On Amazon. That's wild. Oh, and I almost forgot Rebecca Yarros, the author. This book has already been extended into a 5-book series. 5 books! So she's clearly doing something right. Readers are hooked. So what is it about Fourth Wing? What makes it so special? Let's dive into these sources and see what we can find.
I think one of the things that makes Fourth Wing stand out is that it takes classic fantasy elements, like dragons and, the whole chosen one narrative, but it adds a modern twist. For example, Violet, the main character, she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, and it's not just there as like a random challenge for her to overcome. It actually reflects. I think it reflects a growing desire in fantasy for more diversity, for more representation.
That's a really good point. Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit. Fourth Wing takes place in the country of Navarre, which is protected by these elite dragon riders who train it. Bastiath War College, and from what I've read, it sounds pretty intense.
Intense might be an understatement. I mean,
the college itself is divided into 4 quadrants. You have the scribes, the riders, the healers, and the infantry. But you want to be a rider, you have to go through this brutal selection process. Like, there's this thing called the parapet, which is basically a narrow bridge, hundreds of feet in the air, and
no safety net.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying. I'm not sure I could handle that. And one review I read said that most riders, they don't even reach retirement. Talk about high state.
Right, you really get a sense of sacrifice, duty, all those things that are so important in military fantasy. These young riders, they're literally putting their lives on the line to protect Navarre.
On the Griffins.
And the Dredger, who are constantly trying to break through these magical wards that protect the country.
Wow. Speaking of putting your life on the line, let's talk about Violet, our main character. She is not your typical warrior princess. You know, she wants to be a scribe, but her mother, the commanding general, forces her into the writer's quadrant. And to make things even more complicated, she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Exactly. And that's what makes Violet so interesting.
Yes,
because she's not physically strong, but she's incredibly intelligent and a really strategic thinker. So she has to rely on her mind more than brute strength. And that makes her a really compelling protagonist.
For sure. And on top of all of that, she doesn't just bond with one dragon, she bonds with 2, which I've heard has never happened before. That's got to make her incredibly powerful, right?
Right.
How does someone even get a dragon in this world? Is it like, choosing a pet?
Not quite. There's actually this intense ceremony called the threshing, where unbonded cadets are released into a field full of dragons, and the dragons choose their riders based on, nobody really knows for sure. It seems to be a mix of things. Instinct, compatibility, maybe even a little bit of dragon magic.
Okay, so the threshing, it sounds equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. So tell me more about Violet's dragons. What are they like?
She has Tern, who's this massive black dragon, like one of the most powerful dragons in Navarre. And then there's Endarna, who is smaller, more agile, and yellow. And what's really interesting is the author, she gives the dragons distinct personalities. They can mind read, share emotions with their riders. They're not just mindless beasts.
I have to admit, the dragons are one of the things I'm most curious about. I mean, who doesn't love a good dragon? But let's move on to something else that everyone's been buzzing about, the love triangle. So on one hand, we have Dane, Violet's childhood best friend, who's now squad leader in the Rider's Quadrant. He's very overprotective of Violet, wants her to go back to the scribes.
And he constantly doubts her abilities. It's a little frustrating, honestly. It's like he can't handle the idea of her being strong and independent.
Right. It does feel a little, manipulative, like he's trying to control her under the guise of concern. And then there's Xaden, the brooding, powerful wing leader whose mother was killed by, wait for it, Violet's mother. Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Oh, absolutely. And yet the chemistry between them is undeniable. It's like every interaction is full of this witty banter, this simmering tension. You can just feel it. He seems to understand her in a way that Dane just doesn't. And he really pushes her to be her best, even if it means putting herself in danger.
So it sounds like Xaden represents a different kind of masculinity, one that's more comfortable, with a woman being powerful.
But he's not exactly a safe choice, is he? He leads this secret group of rebel children, and he's clearly harboring some resentment towards Navarre.
He is definitely a complex character. I mean, on the surface, he's ruthless, driven by revenge, but underneath it all, he's fiercely loyal to the people he cares about. And he's trying to survive in a system that has wronged him. and he's using his position to
Yeah.
protect others who are struggling. It makes you wonder what his endgame is. Is he truly loyal to Navarre, or is he biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike?
That's the question, isn't it? And that's what makes him so compelling. You never quite know what he's thinking or what he'll do next. And then there's that bombshell at the end of Fourth Wing. Violet discovers that her brother, Brennan, who everyone thought was dead, is actually alive and leading the Venin.
Hold on, I need to process this for a second. So the brother everyone thought was dead is alive, and he's leading the enemy. Wow, that's a twist. What exactly are the Venin anyway?
The sources are kind of vague on the details, but it's clear. They're powerful and dangerous. They have a different kind of magic than the Dragon Riders, and they seem to be responsible for weakening the wards that protect Navarre.
So basically, they're a huge threat. But why would Brennan join them? I mean, what are his motives? Is he just trying to take down the government, or is there something more to it?
That is the million-dollar question. Fourth Wing doesn't give us all the answers, which honestly makes it even more intriguing. It leaves you wanting more.
Okay, so to recap, we have a heroine with a disability who is defying expectations. We have dragons with personalities, a forbidden romance,
Right.
and a brother who's leading the enemy. That's a lot to take in. And we haven't even talked about the training these riders go through.
Right, and it's brutal. There's this obstacle course called the Gauntlet. It's basically designed to kill anyone who isn't strong enough.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, they have these rotating logs, swinging metal balls, a narrow chimney that you have to climb using only your back and legs.
Oh my gosh, that sounds claustrophobic. I can't even imagine. But why would Navarre make the training so deadly when they desperately need more riders? It seems counterintuitive.
It's one of those things that some reviewers have pointed out. Maybe it's a way to weed out the weak. Only the strongest and most skilled riders survive. It could also be that it's just a reflection of a flawed system, one that prioritizes tradition over practicality.
It makes you think about the larger themes of the book.
Right.
Duty, individual survival, the cost of war, the ways in which systems can fail the people they're supposed to protect.
Absolutely. And those themes are woven throughout the story, which makes it so much more than just a typical fantasy romance.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored the world of Navarre, met our complex heroine, encountered some fascinating dragons, and delved into a forbidden romance with some dangerous consequences. But there's still so much more to unpack.
Definitely. When we come back for part 2, we'll dive deeper into the love triangle, explore the complexities of Xaden's character, and try to unravel the mysteries surrounding the wards and the looming threat from the Veninin.
And we'll tackle the big question. Is Violet's determination inspiring, or is it reckless, given her EDS and the constant danger she faces? Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. With part 2 of your Fourth Wing deep dive, last time we were talking about Violet and her determination. Is it inspiring, or is it reckless? I mean, especially with her EDS and all the danger she's in. It's a tough question.
Yeah, and it's like she's walking a tightrope. You admire her tenacity. You know, she's not letting her condition define her. But at the same time, you can't help but worry about her.
Right, because she's pushing herself so hard in a world where one wrong step could be fatal. Like that gauntlet.
Oh, yeah. That's a perfect example of how the author really pushes Violet, both physically and mentally. It's not just about surviving, it's about excelling. Like, she has to prove herself all the time. To everyone, but also, I think, to herself. It makes you wonder how much of this is ambition and how much of it is a need for validation.
That's an interesting point. Speaking of complicated motivations, let's talk about Dane. I get that he's worried about Violet, but he just comes across as so possessive.
I agree. His overprotectiveness is a bit much. It's almost suffocating. Like, he can't accept that she's becoming this strong, independent dragon rider.
Yeah. It makes their childhood friendship feel kind of sad, like they've grown apart, and he's clinging to this version of Violet that doesn't exist anymore. And then there's Xaden, who seems to understand her in a way that Dane never could.
Their dynamic is electric. We talked about the banter, the tension, but it goes deeper than that. They both understand what it's like to be underestimated, to be judged by appearances. They see each other's strengths, but they also see each other's vulnerabilities.
I know some people have criticized the insta-love aspect of their relationship, but honestly, I think it's refreshing to see a strong female character who's allowed to be attracted to someone. She's not just waiting around to be rescued.
Yeah, I see what you mean. She's making her own choices, even if they're risky. And let's be honest, the forbidden romance trope is a classic for a reason. It adds this whole other level of excitement and danger.
Right. But we can't forget that Zayzaydin is keeping some pretty big secrets. Like that group of rebel children he's leading, he's teaching them how to survive in a system that's trying to crush them. What do you make of that?
I think it says a lot about him. It shows that he's not just this brooding bad boy. He's a survivor. He's taken all the pain, all the injustice, and turned it into something positive, at least for the people he cares about.
I still wonder, though, is he using Violet? Is he really on her side? Or is he manipulating her to get what he wants?
It's a question that keeps coming up. He seems drawn to her, but he's definitely hiding something. And his motivations are still a mystery.
Exactly. That's what makes him so fascinating. You never know what he's really thinking or what he's going to do next. And then there's that bombshell about her brother Brennan. I mean, to find out he's alive and leading the enemy, that's got to be devastating for Violet.
Absolutely. It forces her to question everything, her family, her world.
Right. It makes you wonder, were there any warning signs? Was there any indication that Brennan might have resentment towards Navarre? Or maybe he was brainwashed. Maybe the Venin forced him to do their bidding.
That's the thing, you just don't know. What happened to him during all those years? Was he tortured, manipulated, or did he choose this path?
It adds this whole other layer to Violet's story. It's not just about survival anymore, or even saving her nation. It's about saving her family.
And then there's the question of the Venin themselves. What are they really after? Are they just trying to overthrow the government? Or is there something more to it?
Yeah, the sources mentioned some pretty dark magic. It sounds like they're a serious threat.
They do. It makes you wonder if they're playing a longer game. One that could destroy Navarre.
So we've got a complicated love triangle, a brother who's leading the enemy, and this mysterious group of magic wielders. But what about the world itself? What about those magical barriers, the wards that protect Navarre?
The wards are essential. They keep the griffins out. But they're also connected to the dragons and their magic. So the fact that they're weakening suggests that something's wrong, something that could have really bad consequences.
It raises the stakes even higher. It's not just about Violet's survival, it's about the fate of an entire nation.
And that's where Violet comes in. She might be the key to saving everyone.
I'm still curious about the dragon bonding process. You mentioned the threshing, but what exactly happens?
Well, it's basically controlled chaos. You have all these dragons in a field, and the cadets, they're presented to them. And everyone's waiting to see who gets chosen. This is supposed to be a very intense experience.
So it's not just about skill or strength. It's about finding a dragon that connects with you on a deeper level.
Exactly. It's a partnership based on trust and understanding. And in Violet's case, bonding with two dragons is unheard of. It suggests she has something special, something that draws these creatures to her.
Maybe it's her resilience, her determination, or maybe it's her compassion.
Who knows? But it definitely makes her a force to be reckoned with. Speaking of powerful forces, we should talk about the politics of Navarre. I know there was a rebellion, but the sources I have are a little vague on the details.
Right. What caused the rebellion, and who are the main players in the current power structure?
We know Violet's mother, General Singal, is a pretty formidable figure. I mean, she's the commanding general. But there's also Colonel Ados, Dane's father. He seems to have a lot of influence.
I get the sense that there's a lot happening behind the scenes, especially with the wards failing and the Venin threat.
It wouldn't be surprising if there were factions within Navarre who were taking advantage of the situation. Or maybe there are people who sympathize with the Venin, people who think that change is needed.
Wow. That's a lot to think about. So we have a crumbling society, a powerful enemy, a web of political intrigue, and a heroine who's caught in the middle of it all.
Don't forget about her friendships, though. Even in the Riders Quadrant, she finds people she can rely on, like Mira, and even Dane. He might not agree with her choices, but he still cares about her.
That's a good point. It shows that even in this world of danger and betrayal, there's still room for connection.
It's a reminder that hope and connection can exist anywhere.
I think we're ready. For the final part of our deep dive, we've explored the world, the characters, the themes, but we haven't talked about that cliffhanger ending.
Oh yeah. What about all those unanswered questions? What's going to happen to Violet? Who will she choose? Dane or Azen? And can she save Navarre?
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll tackle all the big reveals, the betrayals, and the heart-stopping conclusion of Fourth Wing. We're back for the final part of our deep dive, and oh boy, that ending. So many questions, so many twists and turns.
I know, right? You've finish the book and you just sit there thinking about it, it really gets under your skin.
Before we get to the ending, though, I'm still curious about the dragon bonding. We've talked about the threshing, but can you walk me through it? What actually happened?
So picture this, a field, and it's full of dragons, all different shapes and sizes. Their energy is just crackling. And then you have the cadets standing there, waiting to see which dragon will choose them.
Oh, wow, that must be so intense, knowing that your whole future, your survival even, depends on a dragon picking you.
Exactly. It's all about this connection, this primal pull between dragon and rider. Some people say the dragons can sense a person's heart, their character, their potential.
Oh, wow. So it's not random, it's like destiny.
In a way. And then you have Violet, who gets chosen by not one, but 2 dragons.
Right, which is unheard of.
It's like she was meant for this.
And these aren't just any dragons either. Tairn, the powerful black dragon, and Andarna, the fast yellow one.
They both bring something different to the bond. It's like they balance each other out, and they complement her strength.
Speaking of strengths, let's talk about that twist at the end. Violet's brother, Brennan, who everyone thought was dead, he's not only alive, he's leading the Venin.
Oh, man. That was a shocker. It makes you question everything about this story.
Right. Like, were there any clues, any hints that Brennan might have felt this way?
I don't know. Maybe we missed something.
Or maybe he was brainwashed? Maybe the Venin forced him?
That's a possibility. We don't really know what happened to him during all those years.
It's just heartbreaking for Violet.
It is. It adds a whole new layer to her story.
Okay, but what about the Venin themselves? What are they really after?
That's the big question. It seems like they want to overthrow the government.
I think it's more than that. There's something darker going on.
Right. The sources mentioned some pretty intense magic. Yeah. It's like they're tapping into something ancient, something chaotic.
So we have this young woman, Violet, who everyone underestimated. And she has to find a way to stop this powerful enemy, to save her world.
It's a classic hero's journey, but with a modern twist.
I think that's why people love this book so much. It reflects our own world, where everything feels uncertain, and there are threats everywhere.
Yeah, but it also gives us hope. It shows us that one person can make a difference.
Fourth Wing reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's still room for courage and compassion.
It's a story that makes you think.
It really does. It leaves you with so many questions about strength, loyalty, sacrifice.
That's what makes it so powerful.
It's not just a fantasy novel. It's a story about human connection, love, hope.
And don't forget, this is just the beginning. There are 4 more books in the series.
So much more to explore. I can't wait to see what happens next.
If you haven't read Fourth Wing yet, what are you waiting for? It's an incredible story. And be sure to check out Iron Flame, the next book in the series.
That's it for our deep dive into Fourth Wing. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, happy reading.